The Grizzly's roar split the morning air like a gunshot, and Quincy knew three things in that frozen instant. He was about to die, his Winchester was 5 feet away where it had fallen, and the woman trapped beneath the overturned travois was going to die with him. At 25 years old, Ethan had survived the war between the states, 2 cattle drives through Comanche territory, and a winter that killed half the livestock in Montana. He had survived by keeping to one simple truth. On the frontier, attachment meant loss, and love meant a grave marker on some windswept hill. His parents had loved each other fiercely, and he had watched cholera take them both within 3 days when he was 16. His best friend had married a girl from St. Louis, and Ethan had helped bury them both after their cabin burned. No, the West was no place for the softness of love. A man stayed alive by staying alone, by keeping his heart as hard and closed as winter ground. But the woman's dark eyes met his across the clearing, and something in their depths made him forget every rule he had lived by. The Grizzly was massive, easily 800 pounds, her silver-tipped fur bristling with rage. She had 2 cubs behind her, which explained everything. Ethan had been riding fence line for the Double R Ranch when he heard the terrified whinny of a horse, then the splintering crash of wood. He had spurred his buckskin gelding toward the sound, cresting a small rise to see disaster unfolding. An Apache woman, alone, her travois shattered, pinned beneath the heavy lodge poles and supplies. The Grizzly sow advancing, cubs mewling behind her, the woman's pony bolting in terror. Ethan had done the stupid thing, the thing a man who wanted to survive should never do. He had yelled, fired his rifle into the air, drawn the bear's attention to himself, given the woman a chance. Now his rifle was in the dirt, he had only his Colt revolver with 6 shots against a charging grizzly, and he was standing between 800 pounds of maternal fury and her perceived threat. The bear charged, Ethan fired. Once, twice, the shots struck home but barely slowed her. She was closing fast, 20 feet, 10 feet. He could smell her, wild and rank. He squeezed the trigger again. Then the woman was beside him impossibly, having dragged herself free. She held a bow, arrow knocked, and the string sang. The arrow took the bear in the shoulder, perfectly placed. Another arrow, this one to the throat. The bear faltered, turned, confused. Ethan emptied his revolver into her chest. The Grizzly collapsed 3 feet from them, her momentum carrying her forward in a slide of dirt and dead pine needles. The cubs, sensing their mother's death, fled into the timber. Ethan's hands were shaking, his ears rang from the gunshots. The woman swayed beside him and he caught her as her legs buckled. Blood soaked her deerskin dress at the thigh where a lodge pole had gouged her. Her face was pale beneath its copper tone, twisted with pain. "Your leg," he said, his voice rough. "Your courage," she replied in accented but clear English. Then her eyes rolled back and she went limp in his arms. Ethan stood in the clearing with an unconscious Apache woman in his arms, a dead grizzly at his feet, and every instinct screaming at him to walk away. To set her down gently, ride to the nearest Apache camp, report what happened, and disappear back into his solitary life. Instead, he found himself lifting her onto his horse, retrieving his Winchester, and turning toward the line shack 6 miles west. Telling himself it was simple Christian duty. Knowing, in the part of himself he tried to keep silent, that the moment their eyes had met across that clearing, something had shifted in the bedrock of his carefully constructed isolation. The ride to the line shack blurred into a test of endurance. The woman, whom he had draped across his saddle, moaned occasionally but did not wake. Blood continued to seep from the gash in her thigh, and Ethan pressed his bandana against it, holding it in place with one hand while guiding his horse with the other. The Montana sun climbed higher and sweat trickled down his spine beneath his cotton shirt and leather vest. When the rough timber shack finally came into view, Ethan felt a relief so profound it startled him. He told himself it was just practical concern. A dead woman would mean questions, complications. The truth that he refused to examine was that her shallow breathing had become the only sound that mattered in his world. He carried her inside, kicking the door open with his boot. The shack was spartanly furnished, a rope bed with a cornhusk mattress, a potbelly stove, a rough-hewn table and 2 chairs, supplies lined crude shelves. He laid her on the bed as gently as his calloused hands allowed. In the daylight filtering through the single window, he could see her more clearly. She was young, perhaps 22 or 23, with a face that would have been called beautiful in any territory or town. Her black hair, thick and straight, was bound in a traditional Apache style with strips of red cloth. Her deerskin dress was finely made, decorated with blue and white beadwork in geometric patterns. She wore a silver and turquoise bracelet on one slender wrist. Ethan forced himself to focus on the wound. He had doctored enough ranch hands and cattle to know basic medicine. He heated water on the stove, tore clean cloth from a spare shirt, and set about cleaning the gash. It was deep but had missed the major vessels. She would survive if infection did not set in. As he worked, she stirred, her eyes fluttering open. They were deep brown, almost black, and they fixed on him with an intensity that made his hands still. "Easy," he said, "you are hurt. I am cleaning the wound." She studied him for a long moment, and he wondered what she saw. He knew what he looked like, tall and lean, weathered by sun and wind, his light brown hair too long beneath his dusty Stetson, his jaw covered with 3 days of stubble. Gray eyes that had been told were cold as Montana winter. He had never thought much about his appearance, but under her gaze he felt suddenly conscious of every scar, every rough edge. "Why did you help me?" she asked finally. Her voice was low and musical despite the pain. "Could not leave you to that bear. Most white men would." He had no answer to that because she was right. He carefully pressed a clean bandage against her thigh and began wrapping it. "What is your name?" She hesitated as if weighing whether to trust him. "Winona Graywing." "Ethan Quincy," he tied off the bandage. "You need rest and water. Are you hungry?" Winona attempted to sit up, winced, and fell back. "My supplies." "My horse." "Your horse ran off. I can go back for your supplies tomorrow, whatever the bear did not destroy." He fetched a tin cup of water, helped her raise her head to drink. The intimacy of the gesture made something twist in his chest. He pushed the feeling away. "Where were you going?" "Fort Benton, to trade, to see if my brother is there." "Fort Benton is 80 miles north." "I know where it is, Cowboy." Despite everything, a smile tugged at the corner of Ethan's mouth. Spirit, she had spirit to match her courage with that bow. "You will not make it 80 miles with that leg, not for a week at least." Winona's jaw tightened. "I cannot stay here, my people will worry." "Where is your camp?" "South. 3 days' ride." "Can you send word? Is there someone I can take a message to?" She turned her face away and he saw something shift in her expression. Pain, yes, but also something deeper. "There is no one, my family," she trailed off. "They are gone, smallpox 2 winters ago. My brother survived, but he left to scout for the army. I have not seen him in a year." Ethan knew that grief. It was in the set of her shoulders, the hollowness behind her eyes. He recognized it because he saw it in his own reflection every time he shaved. "I am sorry," he said and meant it. She looked back at him and for a moment something passed between them, an understanding. Two people who had survived when others had not. Two people who had learned that the frontier took everything you loved and gave nothing back. "You should go," Winona said quietly. "Leave me some supplies." "I will manage." "Cannot do that." "Why not? You do not know me. I am nothing to you." Ethan stood, walked to the stove, poured himself coffee from the pot that was always simmering during cattle season. He stared into the black liquid, searching for an answer that made sense. "Because you stood with me against that bear," he said finally. "You could have crawled away while it was focused on me. Instead, you stood." "That means something." "It means I am a fool." "It means you are brave." Winona laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Brave, yes. That is what my mother called me when I refused to stay in camp like the other girls, when I insisted on learning the bow like my brother. She said I was brave, then she died and my father and my sisters, and I learned that bravery means nothing against sickness or soldiers or the way the world is changing." Her voice broke. "I am tired of being brave." Ethan turned to face her. In the dim light of the shack, with pain and exhaustion etched into her beautiful features, Winona looked heartbreakingly young, and alone, so terribly alone. He knew he should maintain distance, should treat her wound, give her supplies, and ride away. Attachment meant loss. Love meant a grave on a hill, but he heard himself say, "Then rest, just for today. Tomorrow we will figure out what comes next." She held his gaze and slowly she nodded. Outside, the Montana wind picked up, whistling through the pines. Inside the line shack, something neither of them could name had begun. The first day passed in a careful dance of proximity and distance. Ethan busied himself with tasks around the shack, checking fence lines nearby, hunting a jackrabbit for stew. Winona slept fitfully, waking occasionally to drink water or eat the broth he prepared. When their eyes met, they both looked away quickly, as if afraid of what they might see. By the second day, Winona's fever broke and she insisted on sitting up. Ethan helped her to the chair by the table, where she could look out the small window at the surrounding forest. Her leg was healing cleanly, but she could not yet put weight on it. "Tell me about this ranch you work for," she said as he prepared a meal of beans and cornbread, the double R. "Not much to tell, cattle operation. I handle the fence lines, the line shacks, some breaking of horses." He paused. "It is work, it pays." "You do not love it." Her perception startled him. "Never thought about loving work. It is just what a man does." Winona was quiet for a moment. "My father loved his work. He made bows, trained horses. He said a man should do what makes his spirit sing, or he is only half alive." "Your father sounds like he was a wise man." "He was. And it did not save him." She turned from the window to look at Ethan directly. "What makes your spirit sing, Ethan Quincy?" No one had ever asked him that. He set down the pot he was holding. "I do not know. I have not heard it sing in a long time." "Why not?" "Because I have been busy surviving." "That is not living." "It is enough." Winona shook her head. "You saved my life. You did not have to. That was not surviving. That was something else." Ethan felt exposed, as if she could see through the walls he had built around himself. "I did what any decent man would do." "No," she said softly. "You did what a man with a good heart does, even when he is trying to hide it." He had no response to that. Instead, he served the meal in silence and they ate without speaking. But the words hung in the air between them, impossible to ignore. That night, Ethan slept on the floor near the stove, giving Winona the bed. He lay awake, listening to her breathing, thinking about what she had said. He had spent 9 years building a life of isolation, convincing himself it was the only way. Work the ranch, save money, ask nothing of anyone, offer nothing of himself. It had seemed like wisdom born of hard experience. Now, with an Apache woman sleeping 6 feet away, a woman he had known for 2 days, he felt the foundations of that wisdom cracking. She had seen something in him that he had tried to bury. And worse, he was beginning to see something in himself he had forgotten existed. The possibility that he was only half alive. On the third day, Winona was strong enough to walk with Ethan's support. He helped her outside to sit in the sun, and she turned her face to the warmth with an expression of such pure contentment that it made his chest ache. "I have been thinking," she said as he settled beside her on the rough bench he had dragged from inside, "about what you said, that I stood with you against the bear." "You did. But you stood first, you drew the bear away from me, you could have ridden past, but you chose to stop." She looked at him. "Why, Ethan? Tell me the truth." He watched a hawk circle overhead, considering his answer. The truth felt dangerous, like opening a door he had nailed shut, but she had been honest with him, sharing her grief, her loneliness. She deserved honesty in return. "I was 16 when my parents died," he began slowly. "Cholera, they loved each other so much that when my mother got sick, my father never left her side. He held her hand through the end. 3 days later he was gone too." He swallowed. "I told myself then that love was dangerous, that caring about people in this hard country was just setting yourself up for loss. But you stopped for me anyway." "I did. And I have been trying to understand why." He finally met her eyes. "When I saw you trapped, when I saw that bear coming, I did not think, I just acted. It was like some part of me that I had shut down just took over." "The part that your parents would recognize," Winona said softly. "The part that knows love is worth the risk of loss." "Is it?" Ethan asked. "Is it worth it?" Winona was quiet for a long time. A breeze stirred the pines, carrying the scent of sap and wild grasses. Finally she spoke. "I do not know. After my family died, I thought my life was over. I wanted to die too, but my brother made me promise to live, to keep going, so I have, trading, traveling, surviving. But like you said, it is not the same as truly living." "What is the difference?" She reached out and her hand covered his where it rested on the bench between them. The touch was electric, sending warmth through his entire body. This, she said. Connection, risk, letting someone see you really see you, that is living, and it terrifies me. Ethan looked down at their hands. Hers was smaller, the fingers long and graceful, the skin smooth despite her hard life. His was scarred, rope-burned, weathered. They should not fit together, but they did. It terrifies me too, he admitted. They sat like that, hands touching, neither speaking, as the sun moved across the sky. And Ethan felt something he had not felt in 9 years. He felt hope. The fourth day brought a complication neither of them had anticipated. Ethan was checking the fence line a half-mile from the shack when he saw riders approaching. 3 men, and he recognized them immediately, Jake Mercer and 2 of his hands from the neighboring property. Mercer was a hard man who ran his cattle with an iron fist and had a well-known hatred for Indians. Ethan spurred his horse to intercept them before they reached the shack. He did not want Mercer anywhere near Winona. "Quincy," Mercer called out as Ethan rode up. He was a thick-built man in his 40s with a graying beard and eyes like chips of flint. "Heard there was some commotion out this way, Grizzly trouble." "Killed a sow 3 days back," Ethan confirmed. "She had cubs, came at me when I got too close." "That's so," Mercer's eyes narrowed. "Funny thing. We found an Indian travois all busted up near where you said you killed that bear. You know anything about that?" Ethan kept his face neutral. "Found it after. Whoever it was must have run off when the bear showed up." "Must have," Mercer did not sound convinced. "You staying out at the line shack?" "That is my job." "Might want to be careful. Lone Indian around here could mean trouble, could mean more coming." Mercer leaned forward in his saddle. "We find any Indians on our land, we do not ask questions first, you understand." Ethan felt anger flare in his chest, hot and sudden. "This is double our land, not yours. And I will handle things as I see fit." Mercer's hand dropped to his sidearm. "That sounds like you are getting mouthy, boy." "That sounds like I am doing my job. Now if you are done visiting, I have work to do." For a long moment, tension crackled in the air. Then Mercer laughed, a cold sound. "You always were a strange one, Quincy. War turned you peculiar, but you watch yourself. This territory has no room for Indian lovers." He wheeled his horse and rode off, his men following. Ethan watched them go, his heart pounding. Mercer was dangerous, the kind of man who would burn an Apache woman out of sheer meanness and call it justice. Ethan had just made an enemy, and Winona was caught in the middle. When he returned to the shack, Winona was standing by the window, her face pale. "I heard horses, I hid." "That was smart." Ethan closed the door, checked his Winchester. "That was Jake Mercer. He knows there was an Indian here. He does not know you are still here, but he suspects." "I should leave." "You cannot walk 80 miles on that leg." "I can ride if you have a horse to spare." Ethan thought of his buckskin gelding, steady and strong. He thought of Winona riding alone through territory where men like Mercer would shoot her on sight. The idea made his blood run cold. "No," he said. "Ethan, you do not understand. Men like him, they will hurt you for helping me. They might kill you. I know the risk." "Then why?" Her voice rose. "Why are you doing this? You do not owe me anything. Let me go before this gets worse." Ethan crossed the small space between them in 2 strides. He took her shoulders gently, looked into her dark eyes. "Because I am tired," he said roughly. "I am tired of being alone. I am tired of pretending I do not feel anything. You ask me what makes my spirit sing." He paused, the words fighting their way past 9 years of silence. "Maybe it is this, maybe it is you." Winona's eyes widened. "You do not know me. It has been 4 days. I know you stood with me against a grizzly. I know you lost everyone you loved and kept going. I know when you smile, which you have not done nearly enough, it is like the sun coming out." He released her shoulders, stepped back. "I know I have spent 9 years not living, just surviving, and then you came into my life and everything changed." "Ethan," her voice was barely a whisper, "I am not saying I have all the answers. I do not know how this works or where it goes, but I know I am not ready to let you ride away." He met her eyes. "Unless you want to, if you want to go, I will give you my horse, supplies, everything you need. I will not keep you here, but if there is any part of you that feels what I feel, then stay. Stay and let us figure this out together." The silence stretched between them. Outside, a raven called. The wind rattled the door. Then Winona stepped forward and kissed him. It was gentle, tentative, her lips soft against his. Ethan stood frozen for a heartbeat, then his arms came up to circle her waist, pulling her carefully closer, mindful of her injured leg. The kiss deepened, and it was like nothing Ethan had ever experienced. It was not just desire, though that was there, hot and undeniable. It was connection, recognition, coming home to a place he had never been. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Winona rested her forehead against his chest. "I am afraid," she whispered. "Me too. Everything I have loved, I have lost." "I know. What if we do this and it ends in pain?" Ethan tipped her chin up so she had to meet his eyes. "What if we do not do this and we regret it for the rest of our lives? What if we are so afraid of pain that we miss out on joy?" A tear slipped down her cheek. "When did you become so wise?" "About 5 minutes ago." She laughed then, really laughed, and the sound was everything he had hoped it would be, bright and free and alive. She was alive, they both were, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough. "I will stay," Winona said, "for now, until my leg heals, then we will see." It was not a promise of forever, but it was a start. They spent the next 3 days in a bubble of cautious happiness. Ethan taught Winona to play poker with a battered deck of cards he found in the shack. She taught him words in Apache, laughing at his pronunciation. They talked for hours, sharing stories of their childhoods, their losses, their dreams for a future neither had really believed in until now. At night they slept apart, Ethan still on the floor near the stove. But the distance felt heavier now, charged with unspoken longing. He would catch her watching him as he shaved in the morning. She would blush when he helped her change the bandage on her thigh, his fingers lingering perhaps a moment longer than necessary. On the 7th day, Winona's leg had healed enough that she could walk without support. She insisted on coming outside to practice with her bow, which Ethan had retrieved from the site of the bear attack along with the few supplies that had survived. He watched her nock an arrow, draw the string back with practiced ease. Her movements were fluid, graceful, economical. The arrow flew true, striking the target he had set up, an old piece of wood with a charcoal circle drawn on it. "Where did you learn to shoot like that?" he asked. "My brother, he said an Apache woman should be able to defend herself and her family. He was a better teacher than he knew." She nocked another arrow. "What about you?" "Who taught you to shoot?" "Army, then life." He picked up his Winchester. "You learn fast when people are shooting back." "The war." "Yes, and after, cattle rustlers, claim jumpers, men who think they can take what is not theirs." He sighted down the barrel, fired. His shot struck just left of center. "This land makes you hard or it kills you." Winona lowered her bow. "Is that what you think, that we have to be hard to survive?" "I used to. And now?" He looked at her, this beautiful Apache woman who had somehow slipped past every defense he had built. "Now I think maybe being hard is just another way of dying. Maybe the real strength is staying soft enough to feel, to connect, even when it is dangerous." She walked over to him, her limp barely noticeable now. "You are not what I expected, Ethan Quincy." "What did you expect?" "When I saw you were a white cowboy, I thought you would be like the others, rough, cruel, seeing me as something less than human." She reached up, touched his cheek. "But you are kind, you are gentle, you are everything the frontier is supposed to beat out of a man. Maybe the frontier just has not finished with me yet. Or maybe you are stronger than you think." He caught her hand, pressed a kiss to her palm. "You make me want to be stronger. You make me want to be the man you see when you look at me. You already are that man." This time when they kissed, it was different, deeper, more certain. Ethan's hands tangled in her long black hair and she pressed against him, her fingers clutching his shirt. When they finally broke apart, both were shaking. "Winona," he said, his voice rough, "I need to know, what do you want? Not what you think you should want, but what your heart wants." She did not hesitate. I want you, and it terrifies me because I do not know how this works. You are white, I am Apache. Your people hate mine, mine distrust yours. How do we build a life in the middle of that? "I do not know," he admitted, "but I know I want to try. I know I want to wake up every morning and see your face. I know I want to build something real, something that matters." He pulled back slightly so he could look into her eyes. "Marry me." Winona's breath caught. What? Marry me not today, not tomorrow, but when you are ready. When we have figured out how to make this work, marry me and let us build a life together, whatever that looks like. Ethan, you are crazy. We have known each other a week. I know, and maybe I am crazy. But I spent 9 years playing it safe, keeping everyone at a distance, and I was miserable. 1 week with you, and I feel more alive than I have since I was 16 years old. That has to mean something. Tears were streaming down her face now. It means you are either the bravest man I have ever met or the most foolish. Which do you think? She smiled through her tears. Both, definitely both, then she sobered. I want to say yes, but there are things you do not know about me, things that might change your mind. Tell me. She pulled away, walked to the edge of the clearing. Her back was to him, her shoulders tense. My brother who I am looking for. He is not just a scout. He is a spy for the army, helping them track Apache war parties. Many of my people see him as a traitor. If I find him, if I bring him back to our people, there will be consequences. For him, for me. For anyone with me. Ethan absorbed this. Why are you looking for him if it is dangerous? Because he is my brother, because he saved my life when the smallpox came, and I will not abandon him now even if others have. She turned back to face him. But it means danger, Ethan, real danger. Not just angry neighbors like Mercer, but possibly war parties, army patrols, people on both sides who would rather see us dead than together. I understand. Do you really? Because if you are with me, you become a target too. White men will call you an Indian lover, a traitor to your race. Apache warriors might kill you on sight. We would have to leave this territory, start over somewhere no one knows us. And even then, we would never really be safe. Ethan walked to her, took her hands in his. You asked me what makes my spirit sing. It is you, Winona. It is the way you make me feel alive. It is the idea that maybe, just maybe, we could build something good in this hard world. Is it dangerous? Yes. Will there be people who hate us for it? Absolutely. But the alternative is going back to being alone, being half dead inside. And I cannot do that anymore. I will not. What about your job, your life here? I will quit the ranch, we will find your brother, make sure he is safe. Then we will go somewhere new, California, maybe, or Oregon. Somewhere we can start fresh. He squeezed her hands. I have money saved, not much but enough to get started. We will find land, build a homestead. It will not be easy, but we will do it together. Winona searched his face, and he let her see everything. His fear, his hope, his absolute certainty that this was right even though it was crazy. Finally, she nodded. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I will marry you, Ethan Quincy. And we will figure out the rest as we go. He kissed her then, long and deep, pouring 9 years of loneliness and loss into it, and receiving back hope and joy and a future he had stopped believing in. When they finally returned to the shack hand in hand, the sun was setting over the Montana mountains, painting the sky gold and crimson. Neither of them saw Jake Mercer's hired man watching from the tree line, or the way he turned his horse and rode hard toward his boss's ranch. The next morning, Ethan woke to find Winona already up, standing by the window with a tent set to her shoulders. He rose quickly from his bedroll on the floor. What is wrong? Riders. Coming fast. Ethan grabbed his Winchester, moved to the window. His heart sank. 8 men led by Jake Mercer. They were armed and clearly meant business. Get behind the bed, he told Winona. Do not show yourself unless I am down. Ethan, no, we should run. We can get to the trees. On foot with your legs still healing, they would ride us down in minutes. He checked his rifle, then his revolver. I will talk to them. Maybe I can defuse this. You know you cannot. He looked at her, memorizing her face, just in case. I have to try, stay hidden. He stepped out onto the small porch as the riders thundered up. Mercer dismounted, his face twisted with anger. The other men spread out in a loose semicircle, rifles ready. Morning, Mercer, Ethan said calmly. Something I can do for you. You can hand over the Indian you are hiding. I do not know what you are talking about. Do not play me for a fool, boy. My man saw you with her yesterday, saw you kissing her like some lovesick dog. Mercer spat in the dirt. You are a disgrace, consorting with a savage, probably giving her information about our ranches, our herds. She is not a savage. And I am not giving anyone information about anything. Ethan kept his voice level, but his finger was on the trigger guard of his rifle. This is double R land, you have no authority here. I have the authority of decent white men who are tired of Indians stealing, killing, acting like they own land they lost fair and square. Mercer nodded to his men. Search the shack. Two men moved forward. Ethan raised his rifle. Take one more step and I will drop you both. The men froze. Mercer's face darkened. You are threatening to shoot white men over an Indian. You have lost your mind. I am defending my home from trespassers. Now get off this land before someone gets hurt. Your home, Mercer laughed. This is a line shack. You are hired help. You do not own anything here. Maybe not. But I am responsible for it, and I am telling you to leave. The standoff stretched, tense and fragile, 8 armed men against 1. The mathematics were not good. Ethan knew if shooting started, he might take 2 or 3 down, but the rest would kill him and then find Winona. Then Winona stepped out onto the porch beside him. No, Ethan hissed. She ignored him. Her bow was strung, an arrow nocked but not yet drawn. She looked every inch an Apache warrior, fierce and proud and utterly unafraid. I am Winona Graywing, she said clearly. Daughter of Standing Bear, sister of Thomas Graywing who scouts for Colonel Morrison at Fort Benton. I am not hiding, I am not stealing, I was injured and this man helped me. That is all. Your brother is a traitor, one of Mercer's men called out, and you are trespassing. I am on double R land with permission. This man is employed here. He has the right to bring who he wishes to a lined shack. He has no right to bring an Indian. Winona's eyes flashed. This Indian saved his life 2 weeks ago when a grizzly attacked. Where is the crime in that? Mercer held up a hand, silencing his men. He studied Winona with cold calculation. You are Thomas Graywing's sister. I am. I know your brother, good man. Help track down the war party that hit the Johnson place last year. Mercer rubbed his jaw. You here looking for him? Yes, I received word he might be at Fort Benton. I was traveling there when the bear attacked my camp. It was a masterful performance. Winona was telling the truth while carefully shaping it to appeal to Mercer's prejudices. She was playing on her brother's reputation, presenting herself as harmless. Ethan could see the calculation working in Mercer's face. Finally, the man nodded slowly. All right, you can travel to Fort Benton, but you do not come back through here, and you, he pointed at Ethan, you are done at double R. I will make sure the owner knows you are not fit to work his land. You will be lucky to find work cleaning stables after this. I was planning to quit anyway, Ethan said. Mercer's eyes narrowed. You are a fool, Quincy. You could have had a good life here. Now you have thrown it away for a woman you will never really have. Whites and Indians do not mix. You will learn that the hard way. Maybe. Or maybe you are wrong. Ethan lowered his rifle slightly, a gesture of peace but not surrender. Either way, it is my choice to make. Mercer stared at him for a long moment, then shook his head. Your funeral, he swung back onto his horse. I want you both off this land by sundown. I will be back to check. If you are still here, we finish this conversation with bullets. The riders wheeled their horses and thundered away, leaving a cloud of dust hanging in the morning air. Ethan turned to Winona. She was shaking, he realized, though she had shown no fear in front of Mercer. He pulled her into his arms and she clung to him. That was incredibly brave and incredibly stupid, he said into her hair. I know, but I could not let you face them alone. We need to leave now before he changes his mind. She nodded against his chest. Fort Benton. Fort Benton, we find your brother, we figure out our next move. He pulled back to look at her. Are you sure about this, about me? Because after this there is no going back. I will be marked as an Indian lover and you will be marked as a woman who chose a white man. It will not be easy. Winona reached up, cupped his face in her hands. I am more sure of this than I have been of anything since my family died. You are my future, Ethan, whatever that looks like, wherever it leads. I am with you. He kissed her fiercely, trying to pour all his love and fear and hope into it. Then they broke apart and began to pack. By noon, they were riding north. Ethan on his buckskin gelding, Winona on a paint mare he had traded his extra saddle and gear for from a ranch hand who owed him a favor. They had supplies for 2 weeks, 2 rifles, Winona's bow, and a shared determination to build something good out of the ashes of their old lives. As they rode, Ethan found himself thinking about his parents. About the way his father had held his mother's hand through her death, even knowing he would likely follow. He had spent 9 years seeing that as weakness, as the folly of love. Now he understood it differently. His father had not been weak. He had been strong enough to love fully, even unto death. That was not foolishness, that was courage. Winona rode beside him, her long black hair streaming in the wind, her face turned toward the future, and Ethan felt his spirit sing. The ride to Fort Benton took 6 days. They traveled carefully, avoiding main trails, camping in hidden valleys. At night, they would make a small fire, cook simple meals, and talk for hours under the vast Montana sky. Ethan learned about Winona's childhood, growing up in an Apache camp that moved with the seasons. She learned about his years after the war, drifting from job to job, never settling, never connecting. On the third night, with the fire burned down to coals and the stars brilliant overhead, Winona moved from her bedroll to his. She lay down beside him, her head on his shoulder, her body pressed along his side. "Is this all right?" she asked softly. "Yes," his voice was rough with emotion, "more than all right." They did not make love, not yet. That would wait for marriage, for vows and commitment. But they held each other through the night, and it was intimate in a way that went beyond physical desire. It was trust, it was vulnerability. It was two broken people finding healing in each other's arms. When they finally reached Fort Benton, it was late afternoon on the 6th day. The fort was a sprawling collection of wooden buildings surrounded by a stockade, with the Missouri River glittering beyond. Soldiers drilled in the parade ground. Civilians moved about their business, merchants and trappers and scouts. "I will ask at the command post about my brother," Winona said. "You should stay with the horses. You being with me might cause problems. I am not leaving you alone. Ethan, be practical. The army has complicated relationships with the Apache. If they see me with a white man, they might think I am a spy or causing trouble. Let me do this alone." He wanted to argue, but she was right. Reluctantly, he nodded. "Be careful. If you are not back in an hour, I am coming in." She smiled, kissed him quickly, and slipped into the fort. Ethan found a spot in the shade where he could watch the gates, his hand never far from his rifle. 40 minutes passed, then 50. At 55 minutes, Ethan was preparing to go after her when he saw her emerge. But she was not alone. A tall Apache man walked beside her, dressed in Army Scout's clothing. His face was hard, weathered, but his eyes softened as he looked at his sister. Ethan stood as they approached. Up close, he could see the family resemblance. Thomas Graywing had the same high cheekbones, the same direct gaze as Winona, but where her eyes held warmth, his held wariness. "Thomas, this is Ethan Quincy," Winona said. "Ethan, my brother." "Sir," Ethan offered his hand. After a moment, Thomas took it. His grip was firm, testing. "My sister tells me you saved her life and that you are planning to marry her." "Both are true." Thomas studied him with an intensity that would have made a lesser man squirm. "You know what you're getting into? A white man married to an Apache woman. You will be outcasts on both sides. Your people will hate you. Mine will not trust you. There will be towns you cannot enter, jobs you cannot take, children who will never fully belong anywhere." "I know. And you still want this." Ethan looked at Winona, saw the hope and fear in her eyes. He looked back at Thomas. "I love your sister. I know it has only been a few weeks, but I have never been more certain of anything. I will spend the rest of my life making sure she is safe, that she is happy, that she knows she is valued and loved. And yes, I know it will be hard, but the alternative is living without her, and that is not living at all." Thomas was silent for a long moment, then slowly he smiled. It transformed his face, made him look younger, less haunted. "You are either very brave or very stupid. Your sister said the same thing." "And what did she decide?" "Both." Thomas laughed, a genuine sound. He turned to Winona. "You are sure about him?" "I am," she said firmly. "Then I give you my blessing." He gripped Ethan's shoulder. "But know this, Ethan Quincy, if you ever hurt her, if you ever make her regret choosing you, I will hunt you across this entire territory. I am one of the best trackers in Montana. You will not be able to hide." I would expect nothing less, Ethan said. Thomas nodded, satisfied. Good, now let us talk about your future. You cannot stay in this territory. Mercer and his kind will make your lives hell. But I have contacts. There is a man in Oregon, runs a ranch near the Cascade Mountains. He is fair, employs Indians and whites both. He might give you a chance to start over. Oregon, Winona said thoughtfully, that is far. That is the point, far from people who know you, far from the wars and the hate. You can build a new life there. Thomas looked between them. It will not be easy. Even in Oregon there will be prejudice, but you will have a chance. That is more than you have here. Over the next 2 hours, Thomas laid out a plan. He would give them a letter of introduction to his contact in Oregon, a man named Samuel Bright who ran the High Valley Ranch. He would give them money enough to get them west and settled. And he would send word to the few Apache families who had relocated to Oregon that Winona was coming, that she was under his protection. I cannot come with you, Thomas said as the sun set over Fort Benton. I have obligations here. Scouts I command, promises I made, but I will visit when I can. And Winona, he took his sister's hands, I am glad you found someone. I was afraid after everyone died that you would spend your life alone, carrying that grief forever. But this man, he is good. I can see it in the way he looks at you, the way he stands beside you without trying to stand in front of you. He will be a good husband. Winona embraced her brother, tears streaming down her face. Thank you. For understanding, for not trying to stop me. I learned a long time ago that love is rare in this world. When you find it, you hold on to it with both hands. You and Ethan, you have something special. Do not let anyone take it from you. That night, Ethan and Winona stayed in a boarding house in town, in separate rooms to maintain propriety. But before she retired, Winona came to Ethan's door. He opened it to find her standing in the hallway, still in her deerskin dress, her hair loose around her shoulders. I wanted to say good night, she said softly. Good night, he smiled, though I will miss having you next to me. These past few nights camping, I slept better than I have in years. Me too, she hesitated. Ethan, before we leave for Oregon, before we start our new life, I want us to be married, properly. I know we plan to wait, but I do not want to wait anymore. I do not want to travel to our future as two separate people. I want to go as your wife. His heart swelled. Are you sure? We could wait until Oregon, find a church there. I am sure there is a chaplain at the fort. Thomas already asked. He will marry us tomorrow if we wish. Then tomorrow it is. Ethan pulled her into his arms, held her close. Tomorrow you become Mrs. Ethan Quincy, and I become the luckiest man in Montana. She laughed against his chest. In the world. In the world, he agreed. They married the next day at noon in the fort's small chapel. Thomas gave Winona away. The chaplain, a kind-faced man in his 50s, performed the ceremony with simple dignity. There were no flowers, no music, no guests beyond Thomas and a couple of soldiers who happened to be passing by. But when Ethan slipped a simple gold band onto Winona's finger, a ring he had bought that morning with the last of his savings, it felt more sacred than any ceremony in a grand cathedral. I, Ethan Quincy, take you, Winona Greywing, to be my lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do us part. I, Winona Greywing, take you, Ethan Quincy, to be my lawfully wedded husband. To have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do us part. By the power vested in me by the United States Army and the Lord our God, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride. Ethan kissed his wife as the afternoon sun streamed through the chapel windows, and it was perfect. It was everything. When they finally broke apart, both were crying. Thomas insisted on buying them dinner at the fort's mess hall, a celebration feast of roast beef and potatoes and apple pie. He regaled them with stories of his scouting adventures, making Winona laugh until her sides hurt. For a few hours they were just a family, celebrating a wedding, unburdened by the weight of history and prejudice. As evening fell, Thomas walked them back to the boarding house. At the door he embraced Winona one last time. Be happy, little sister, that is all our parents would have wanted for you. I will, I promise. He shook Ethan's hand. Take care of her. With my life. Thomas nodded, satisfied, and disappeared into the gathering darkness. Ethan and Winona climbed the stairs to their room. This time, it was a single room. The boarding housekeeper had been scandalized at first when she realized Ethan was white and Winona was Apache, but Thomas's uniform and status as an army scout had smoothed things over. She had grudgingly given them a room at the back, away from other guests. Now, as Ethan closed the door behind them, he felt a nervousness he had not experienced since his first battle in the war. Winona stood by the window, her back to him, her shoulders tense. "Are you all right?" he asked softly. "Yes, just nervous." She turned to face him. "I have never been with a man before." "I know, we can take this as slow as you need. We have the rest of our lives." She crossed the room to him, took his hands. "I do not want to go slow. I have been waiting for this for you even before I knew you existed. I just needed to tell you that I am new to this. Then we will learn together." He kissed her gently, carefully, letting her set the pace, but Winona had never been one for caution. She pressed against him, her fingers working at the buttons of his shirt. He helped her, then carefully, reverently, helped her out of her deerskin dress. In the lamplight, her skin glowed like copper. She was beautiful beyond words. They came together on the narrow bed, two people who had been alone for so long finally finding home in each other's arms. It was awkward at first, fumbling and uncertain, but it was also perfect, tender and passionate and deeply intimate. When it was over, they lay tangled together, breathless and laughing. "That was," Winona paused, searching for words. "Yes," Ethan agreed, "it was." She laughed, the sound free and joyous. "I love you, Ethan Quincy." "I love you, Winona Quincy." "Winona Quincy," she repeated thoughtfully. "I like the sound of that." They fell asleep in each other's arms, husband and wife, ready to face whatever the future held. The journey to Oregon took 6 weeks. They traveled by horse as far as they could, then by stagecoach when the terrain became too rough. They passed through towns where their mixed marriage drew stares and whispers, and others where no one seemed to notice or care. They slept under the stars and in boarding houses, in haystacks and by rivers, and through it all, they grew closer. Ethan discovered that Winona had a wicked sense of humor and could outride most men he knew. Winona learned that Ethan sang softly to himself when he thought no one was listening, old songs from before the war. They had their first fight somewhere in Idaho, over something stupid that neither could remember later, and learned how to apologize and forgive. They made love under a full moon in Wyoming and laughed until they cried at a comedy show in a Utah theater. By the time they reached the Cascade Mountains in Oregon, they had been married for 2 months. The High Valley Ranch spread out before them, green and lush, with mountains rising in the distance. The ranch house was large and well-maintained, with corrals and barns and what looked like bunkhouses for the hands. Samuel Bright met them in the yard. He was a tall man in his 60s with white hair and kind eyes. He read Thomas's letter, then looked Ethan and Winona over with an appraising gaze. "Thomas says you are a hard worker," he said to Ethan, "says you know cattle and horses." "I do, sir." "And you," he turned to Winona, "Thomas says you can ride, shoot, and have a good head for numbers." "I can," she confirmed. "Good, I need both. My foreman quit last month to start his own spread. I have been running this place myself and I am getting too old for it." He gestured at the ranch. "I can offer you a cabin on the property, wages for both of you, and a cut of the profits if you help make this place prosper. What do you say?" Ethan looked at Winona. She nodded, her eyes bright with hope. "We say yes," Ethan said. "And thank you, sir. You will not regret this." "I know I will not. Thomas Graywing does not recommend fools," Samuel smiled. "Welcome to High Valley Ranch, welcome home." The first year was hard. Ethan worked from dawn to dusk, learning the rhythms of the ranch, earning the respect of the hands. Some of the men were uncomfortable with an Apache woman giving orders, but Winona's competence and fairness won them over. She managed the ranch accounts, coordinated with buyers in Portland, and proved herself invaluable. They settled into the cabin Samuel had given them, a snug 2-room structure with a stone fireplace and a view of the mountains. Winona planted a garden in the spring. Ethan built her a bookshelf and filled it with books he bought on trips to town. Slowly, they transformed the cabin into a home. The surrounding community was mixed in its acceptance. Some neighbors welcomed them warmly. Others made it clear that a white man married to an Indian woman was an abomination, but Ethan and Winona faced it together, refusing to hide or apologize for their love. On their first anniversary, Ethan surprised Winona with a picnic by a mountain lake. They sat on a blanket, watching the sun set over the water, marveling at how much their lives had changed in a year. "Do you ever regret it?" Winona asked. "Giving up your old life, being marked as an outsider in your own society?" Ethan pulled her close. "Not for a second. You are my home, Winona. Wherever you are, that is where I belong. Even when it is hard, even when people are cruel. Especially then, because that is when I remember what we have built together. This life, this love, it is worth fighting for." She kissed him softly. "I have something to tell you." "What is it?" "I am with child." Ethan felt like his heart might burst. "Truly. Truly. We are going to be parents." He whooped, picked her up and spun her around, both of them laughing. A baby. They were going to have a baby, a child born of their love, a symbol of hope and new beginnings. Their daughter was born the following spring. They named her Sarah after Ethan's mother, with the Apache name Morning Star. She was perfect, with Winona's dark hair and eyes and Ethan's smile. When Ethan held her for the first time, he wept. This tiny, perfect human was a miracle. She was everything he and Winona had fought for, a testament to the truth that love could flourish even in the harshest circumstances. Thomas arrived a month after Sarah's birth, traveling from Montana to meet his niece. He held the baby carefully, his hardened scout's face softening with wonder. "She is beautiful," he said. "She has Winona's strength already." "I can see it." "She has her uncle's courage," Winona replied. Thomas stayed for a week, helping around the ranch, getting to know Ethan better. On his last night, he and Ethan sat on the cabin porch, watching the stars. "I was wrong about you," Thomas said suddenly. "What do you mean?" "When Winona first told me she was marrying a white man, I thought it was a mistake. I thought you would hurt her, leave her, or that the pressure from your people would break you." He looked at Ethan. "But I was wrong. You are a good man, Ethan Quincy. You have given my sister a life I never thought she would have, happiness, security. Love, that baby in there, she is going to grow up knowing she is wanted and cherished. That is a gift." "Thank you," Ethan said, his voice thick. "That means more than you know. Take care of them. Keep fighting for them. Always." The years passed in a rhythm of seasons and milestones. Sarah grew into a bright, curious child who could ride a horse by age 4 and shoot a bow by 6. 2 years after Sarah, a son came, whom they named William, with the Apache name Strong Bear. He had Ethan's gray eyes and Winona's determination. Samuel Bright passed away when Sarah was 8, leaving the ranch to Ethan and Winona in his will. "You made this place thrive," the old man said on his deathbed. "You made it a home, it should be yours." So Ethan and Winona became ranchers, building on what Samuel had started. They hired hands without regard to race, creating a community where Apache, white, Mexican, and Chinese workers labored side by side. The High Valley Ranch became known throughout Oregon as a place of fairness and opportunity. There were still hard times. A drought in the 5th year nearly broke them. A group of night riders burned their barn in the 7th year, angry at their integrated workforce. Ethan and Winona faced each challenge together, their love growing deeper with each trial weathered. On their 10th anniversary, they stood on the hill behind their house, watching their children play in the yard below. The ranch spread out before them, prosperous and thriving. Winona's hair, still black and lustrous, blew in the wind. Ethan's face showed the lines of a decade of hard work and laughter. "Do you remember," Winona said, "when we met, when that grizzly brought us together?" "I remember everything. I remember thinking I was going to die, and then seeing you stand up with that bow and knowing I had to help you. I remember being terrified, and then angry that you had risked yourself for me, and then grateful. And then so quickly it scared me, falling in love." Ethan pulled her close. "We have built something good here. Against all odds, we made it work. We did, and I would not change a single thing. Not even the hard parts. Especially not the hard parts. They made us stronger. They proved that our love was real, that it could withstand anything the world threw at us." Below them, Sarah called out to William, and both children's laughter rang through the evening air. Ethan thought about the man he had been 10 years ago, convinced that love was weakness, that attachment meant loss. That man had been a ghost, moving through life without truly living. Then a grizzly bear had brought him face to face with an Apache woman named Winona, and everything had changed. She had challenged every belief he held, forced him to confront his fears and his false understanding of strength. She had shown him that vulnerability was courage, that love was worth fighting for, that a life shared was infinitely richer than a life lived in isolation. "I love you," he said simply. "Then, now, and always." "I love you too," Winona replied. "My brave, foolish cowboy who stopped for a stranger and changed both our lives forever." They stood together on the hill as the sun set over their ranch, over their home, over the life they had built from the ashes of loss and loneliness. Behind them was a past of pain and struggle. Before them was a future of possibility and love, and in that moment, wrapped in each other's arms, they were exactly where they were meant to be. The grizzly bear had brought them together. But it was love, fierce and true and unbreakable, that had allowed them to build a life worth living. And as the stars began to appear in the Oregon sky, Ethan and Winona knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them as they had faced everything else, together.